But actually, I do know where some of the major portions of gold are today. That would be at the Vatican or in the hands of the royals, because it's a state secret how much they have. And last I heard, there was like 90 tons that they've admitted to having, the royal family, and the actual amount is a state secret. So we're not even allowed to ever know how much the royal family has in gold. We're not allowed to know how much supposedly gold we have at Fort Knox, if you even believe it's still there. It almost makes you think maybe we've made partial payment already.
All of this Biden inflation tax talk, what's it really about? And more importantly, what's the actual effect of inflation on the lives of real people? Joe Biden claims that it's indisputable that his jobs plan is working. This data unequivocally shows that it's not. Well, at least for American workers. Rather, inflation is surging, and more than wiping out any wage gains these workers might have experienced. And historically, when inflation spikes, commodities like gold, silver, lumber, and real estate surge. Learn how simple it is to add physical gold and silver to your portfolio ahead of the rise in inflation and predicted price rises. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA. Call 1-800-356-4470 and get a free investor guide today. And with the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer from 2016 to present, click on the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video.
And if you guys know, maritime law was kind of established as the first law system in my research. So from the moment Inky came off of the ocean and set foot on land, he brought maritime law and rules upon the land. And ever since then, everything that we do has been associated with water. I know a lot of people know I've had Jordan Maxwell on several times talking about this idea about the hidden language in our language that refers to maritime law, like from everything. When you're born in water, you call that a birth. That's the same terminology used whenever a ship goes to the dock. Who delivers the baby is the doctor. So the birth happens at shore, and everything from like the court, you go to the bar is the side, currency, money. It's always every saying that you've ever had about being in debt or being in the good. It's like I'm underwater, you invest in currency, everything. And then everything is a ship, friendship, partnership, the list goes on. So it's all referred to water. And it's really bizarre to me that this covenant goes out of its way to explain things in the same way, with all the way from the monetary system to the illusion. They're talking about drops and water and blood. For you Christians, the water and the blood were if you know the original Bible, it was before there was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and they added that. Before that, it did say there are three that bear witness, and that's the spirit, the blood, and the water, right? So that's like a little thing that's also written in the same way. It's just eerie to me how much they talk about it in this way.
Well, I do like there's a bit of hopefulness inside here, and if they ever find out that together they can vanquish us, they will take action. Is it a great awakening happening with the magnetic fields of the sun declining, where there's a lot of people waking up, but yet there's a lot of people katoing much more easily than I ever thought it would be? But at the same time, a lot of people who I never thought would wake up are, saying things that my jaw's dropping to the floor. Like, what? Do you think like that? Really? Okay. Never thought you for one of those people, the way you talk for the last 40 or 50 years. But there seems to be a lot of awakening across the general populace. Maybe they're, just keeping it quiet because they don't realize others are thinking the same way. Maybe it's because a lot of retirees aren't having to worry about the politics of the job and the company any longer. They can speak freely and say what they want. But it seems there's a lot of awakening in the older generation, and perhaps that's why they're being targeted for removal at the moment. they will vanquish us. They will take action. That's us, the humans on the planet.
You know, another thing I noticed, they must never ever find out what we've done, for if they do, we shall have no place to run. It's like I've heard these before. It's like specific people like Bush, the older Bush. Remember when he was talking about if they ever find out what we did, they would lynch us in the streets? It seems almost like people that come from secret societies like Skull and Bones and other things, and which is also referred to in this, they had access to a portion of this. Because it seems like a lot of these sayings are a little bit twisted, but I've heard them before from certain people that I know are in secret societies. But even in here, it talks about even the people in the secret societies will think they're part of the club, but they're not.
You know, this is written by an off-earth entity here, because for their work, they will be rewarded with earthly things and great titles, but will never become immortal and join us. Never will they receive the light and travel the stars. I mean, come on, that's not somebody sitting here that make it. This is like Anunnaki coming in from the outer solar system, counting planets inward from Pluto. Inward, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, then Earth.
You know, I wasn't even thinking so much about that, but when I first read it, I just thought, wow, this is just worded so vaguely familiar, but also unhuman. Now, it could be just a very creative writer, but the way that it's written, it just seems like something that it maybe was copied from something else. Yeah, right in there, it talks about all of that in the words that they use. The recruits will be called initiates and will be indoctrinated to believe false rites. And that just sounds like every secret society from the Masons all the way up. The old learning schools, I'm sure they had a version of this for the last reset. They called them the mystery schools or whatever. But we're kind of reaching that point again. And I made this point on many occasions that we're at that point where we have known technology, like we could be running our cars off water. There's no reason to be attached to a grid anymore. It's pretty self-obvious with technology that we could aid in the growing of food and cultivate our planet into a paradise if we chose to do that. We're so distracted with wars. The powers that be that put it together did it on purpose, and the actual aggression was never real. They created it, and then they put two factions at each other's throat to get some kind of agenda pushed forward. Like World War I was the League of Nations. They didn't get it, so they tried it again. And they also got what they didn't get in World War I, which was a League of Nations. They just renamed it the United Nations. And since then, we've had a lot of countries kind of fighting, not wanting to get into that. But I would think you would agree that now, so in that sense, a world governance has already been established, and people that are clinging on to the idea that it hasn't happened yet, I think are a little naive and behind the times, not unlike the technology realization that we're in.
When our goal is accomplished, a new era of domination will begin. Well, it sounds like we're at that crux because this reset is happening on purpose. So we've reached a new era. You know, 9/11 was definitely something into a dividing line of a new era has begun. Because I asked my parents, you know, what was beyond the 9/11 in this year, 2020, going back through history, what was the defining moment, year that definitely you knew that a new era had begun in your lives? And they were saying the free and love hippie movement drug thing that was going on in the 60s. They had said right around 68, boom, it happened, that everybody realized that the old ways, the old system, the conservatism, everything had shattered across the society by 68. And that was the summer of love, and that whole Woodstock and the summer of love thing. That was it. That was the defining point for that year, that there was a shift that had definitely moved society in a completely different direction. And they knew the old world was gone. So, you know, we get this about what, every 20 some years. So if you think of 68, 78, 88, 90, about every 30 years.
Somebody just said in the audience, they were, I guess, referring to my Maritime Law statement and said liquid assets. And it made me think of, you remember the first Star Trek movie, the motion picture, where one of our satellites, Voyager, goes through like a wormhole or black hole or whatever, and it ends up meeting technological beings that send it back to find its creator or whatever. But when it gets here, it calls us carbon units. The machine calls everyone carbon units, and then when you think about that, where else do you hear carbon units in today's society? You hear it in the belief that they're going to make a universal carbon credit system, where all the carbon units will have to pay for their presence.
Do you understand? I do not understand.
And then this one right here. Their minds will be bound by beliefs, the beliefs we have established from time immemorial. Does that sound familiar?
That sure sounds like gold mining camps in South Africa from Adam's Calendar, further back with Michael Tellinger's work, is exactly where that came from 400,000 years ago. Yes, it does sound familiar.
Yeah, it's like every civilization on Earth, going back to the Stone Age, and even those civilizations that were segregated from the rest of the world and still were in the Stone Age, there's one thing that links them all. They all found gold important, spiritual even. And not only that, if you think about what they could have did with gold in the, in the Pleistocene or whatever, it wasn't much. They didn't have technology, right? Most of the purposes for gold in today's world are all technological. So like for a guy, I get liking pretty rocks and maybe, that was cool to them. But I think they knew from the beginning that it had some kind of importance. And even after maybe the people that were pushing the importance were gone, that idea stayed within every civilization that gold is super important.
Well, if you leave a few leaders down here who continue that it's important and it is monetary value that holds through everything, and there's a base layer that they go through all these ups and downs of tulip bulbs and whatever else it is, as the rulers of a planet keep that gold system, because the next time around they just reharvest the gold again. It's sort of a repository, a flow of metals storage in certain areas. Because you look around the world, like where are the vast repositories of gold? They might say the LBMA or something like this, or COMEX, but there's always repositories of it, and nobody ever sees it. Could it be there? Maybe it's not there. Nobody really knows. They try to do audits, but somebody like you or I will never be around that much gold to feel the vibration of that much gold. You go to some museums and you go to the King Tut display and whatnot. Is that really solid gold, or are there the replica pieces that are just gold plated? We don't know. But to be in a room full of that much gold would probably have a real vibrational feel to it. But why is it always in repositories? There's not that much gold really around out for the average public person to touch, to feel, to have. Quite heavy, and you could put it between your fingers and, rub a few pieces together. But beyond that, a few ounces here or there. When's the last time you were around, 10 tons of gold, like in the center of it, laying on top of it, surrounded by it?
Do you remember when they opened up Fort Knox and it was a big deal with all the reporters and all that stuff back in the day? And a lot of people pointed out that the math didn't work out right. So they opened up this little vault. It's a little bitty vault, and you can only walk in at about a foot, and gold is just stacked to the ceiling, allegedly. And like you're saying, it looked more like a prop that they painted gold or had gold plated or whatever. But actually, I do know where some of the major portions of gold are today. That would be at the Vatican or in the hands of the royals, because it's a state secret how much they have. And last I heard, there was like 90 tons that they've admitted to having, the royal family, and the actual amount is a state secret. So we're not even allowed to ever know how much the royal family has in gold. We're not allowed to know how much supposedly gold we have at Fort Knox, if you even believe it's still there. It almost makes you think maybe we've made partial payment already. Rent's due.
Imagine sitting on a gold throne. You talk about the royal family. How many things in the daily life are made of gold? Okay, you have gold goblets. So again, you talk about that monatomical gold, whether you're drinking wine, water, whatever, but then sitting on it, surrounded by it. because silver has quite the energetic field too, but I do know more people that have a lot of silver.
Yeah.
And when you get around, 1,000, 2,000 ounces of silver and it's spread out in a room and you walk in there, you can feel the energy. Without a doubt, you're walking onto an electric battery surface almost. You can you get into the room with thousands of ounces of silver. You're like, what's going on in this place? So imagine if it was 1,000 ounces of gold, thousands, plural. It'd have a completely different resonance field in there than silver, but still, it would have electrical connectivity and actually, what was the pyramid covered in gold? Because I know a lot of places in Thailand and Myanmar, and I'll say one thing going into Yangon there. If you go down at downtown Yangon, and there's the most spectacular, unbelievable, I mean, you can see it from the entire city, this glowing gold covered monastery. It is covered in gold, and you can see it, you can feel it when you get up there. When you around that much gold resonating on, those stupas are connectors anyway, and they are conductors. So when you get into that resonance field of the largest gold covered stupa on the entire planet, surrounded by other smaller stupas that are also, it's almost like walking across a circuit board of solid gold and granite and marble with the intent of connecting to the creator all within that element. It's something quite special, and everybody who ever visited, whether you are dogmatic or not, or whether you're an atheist, they get their beliefs changed going into that place. It is one of the most highly resonant change places on the planet. And you know what's happening in Yangon right now? Nobody's allowed there, completely off limits. And, I had to wonder if that had anything to do with it, because Yangon was opening up and so many people were coming there having such the experience of, I don't know, there was something there that would change every single person that had stepped foot onto that thing. And maybe it just, there's a lot of coincidences going on in Myanmar at the moment. And especially on that main stupa there, just you vibrated, you could feel it. You could actually, it resonated through your being. I can't describe it. I sound like a raving lunatic talking about it, but you got to go and feel it. And it's so bad, it's so sad that it's off limits now.
I wanted to get your opinion on this last little part here. It basically says, this is from the Anunnaki. I mean, this little quote here, we are the ones from heaven to earth came. That's like the Sitchin translation, kind of. Other people have agreed that's basically what it says. But this last part, the covenant must never, ever be known to exist. If it must never, ever be written or spoken of. For if it is, the consciousness will release fury of the prime creator. So they're talking about the actual God, or who they believe in, the actual God, that they'll put fury upon them for what they've done here. And then they'll be thrown into time and infinity itself. Now, a lot of people know that the Bible is kind of rewritten cuneiform text stories, a lot of it. And there's some really weird connections there from what you were just saying. If you read about the new heaven and the new earth, the new heaven comes down like if it's a city and it's made out of gold. But then there's also where they talk about throwing the serpent, the beast, and the false prophet into the lake of fire for eternity. And I know a lot of people have a belief in hell and stuff, but if you actually read Revelations, it never actually says that human beings will be put in there. But it does say that some people or some things will be, some entities will be thrown in there back into the darkness from which they came. What do you think about this whole thing about even them fearing an all creator or a prime creator, as they put it on here?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't matter how all powerful or omnipotent you are, even if you're a fifth dimensional being, you would still fear the creator. It doesn't matter if you're the size of a planet or if you are a planet, you're still part of the creation of something that created you. I mean, there's always at the higher echelons of the creation point itself,